created each and every feature, the whole look and feel of the app through consumer studies. So understanding our consumers, all our friends and family members said that this app nobody will use, this doesn't look like the app that we use, it is so stupid, it is so idiotic. Everybody commented negatively on the design, but we only listen to the consumers, and we created an app which looks very different from every other app that I or you would be using. And the day we launched our app, we were doing around 200 to 300 orders on WhatsApp, and that was becoming very hard to manage. On the seventh day from the app launch, we were already doing upwards of 1,000, and then in 3 weeks we were doing 5,000 orders on the app.
My next guest on the 1% project is Sourjyendu Medda. Sourjyendu is the founder and chief business officer at DealShare. After spending 15 plus years with leading retail and FMCG companies such as Metro, Raymond, and Britannia, he kicked off his startup journey at the age of 40 to build a social e-commerce unicorn for Bharat. In this insightful conversation, he talks about how his experience helped him build DealShare, why DealShare has been able to penetrate into a consumer segment where the retail and FMCG giants have not been able to, how to build a consumer-centric business, building and grooming community leaders, how to build an MVP, his leadership style, and why it is hard to copy and compete with DealShare. If you have any feedback about this conversation, topic, or speaker recommendations, you can drop me a line at pritish@1%.live. You can also sign up for the 1% Project's newsletter at 1%.live for the key insights and show notes from this conversation and every other conversation. We kick this conversation off with Sourjyendu, asking him how his experience helped him kick off DealShare.
All my experiences have been very useful. I did my management from NITI, which is the number one supply chain institute in the country. My supply chain background and training started from NITI itself. I did general management, but NITI specializes more on supply chain, and there's a lot of deep learning. I think across the country, that's the best institute on that. So that started my interest on the supply side and also the logistics side of the business. While I was doing my management, I did two internships with Britannia Industries, one in the summers and one in the winters. We had two internship program. Like other management institutes have only 2 months program. Here it is 6 months program. In both the assignments, I did some very path-breaking projects, which the existing Britannia team was not doing. In the first assignment, basically was the time when there was a competition launched by another major biscuit manufacturer, and I was studying how to combat that competition. And it was a large FMCG company which was coming against let's say Britannia with its own huge distribution. So their distribution might is extremely high. So Britannia was really worried that how to combat such a distribution might of a large player, while Britannia was the leader in the biscuit segment. That project, while I was still in my first year, and this was my summer project, gave me a lot of learning about the mass market, how mass market FMCG and grocery works. I got a pre-placement offer from Britannia. Out of 32 summer trainees, they gave only pre-placement offer to 3. In my winter project, in fact, I was instrumental in making the semi-urban and rural distribution model for Britannia. Till that time, Britannia was mostly into urban distribution, and I did that in the toughest market for Britannia, which was Madhya Pradesh. I chose that market to create a model for semi-urban and rural distribution, which then they picked up from me as a trainee, and then they deployed across all states. Today, that model is obviously must have got fine-tuned a lot, but that got into play because of my project. I went to rural markets, went to semi-urban markets of MP, and that too in the Chambal belt. So that was the toughest market to crack. And that is where I proved that yes, a rural and semi-urban distribution can be created for a company like Britannia. And they believe that if it can be done in the toughest market, then across India that can be done. So those were my initial learnings. Then I joined Britannia as a management trainee, also got trained on other facets and then marketing and other streams. My love for consumer business started from there, and I was always a consumer business guy. That is how I started. Then 3 years I was with Citibank, but on the retail asset side. I was on the retail asset sales, and that was very close to the consumer business, selling personal loans to the business area was different. It was not pure play retail or FMCG, but again, very connected to the mass consumers and understanding what the consumer needs and so on. And then 8 years with Metro, I created and headed the CRM and pricing function for them. So that was, and I created the loyalty program for them. Bandhan program became the second largest loyalty program in the trade segment after Unilever program and so on. So there were a lot of things that we did in the CRM and set up the pricing system for them and many other things in that role. And then I moved on to the trader business P&L, which was like the half of the country P&L for them. again connected to the kiranas, and hence understanding what the kirana going consumers are needing. So all through and through, and even when I was in CRM, the whole space was about understanding consumers and understanding their needs. So market research and all was with me. And in my final role, I was heading sales for all customer segments, so which gave a deep understanding of the whole consumer ecosystem there on the retail. Moved back to Raymond FMCG, again heading revenue function for brands like Kama Sutra and Park Avenue and mass products and related to mass consumers. So all these experiences actually gave me a deep understanding of the mass consumers. And also that is a part of the genesis of this whole business of DealShare, because when I was with top retailers and top FMCG brands, what I realized is that there is a huge mass population which is still not connecting with these Western models that the top retailers invest into and grow, and also not getting into the whole branded space. There is a huge unbranded or not known brands market. If I have to look at unorganized retail or unbranded market, that is anywhere between 75 to 80% of India. And while I met the consumers, understood their psyche, I also understood what they really need. And that was the white space which me and my co-founders wanted to go behind, because that, if we crack, becomes the largest retail ecosystem in the country.
What does DealShare really stand for?
DealShare is organize the mass Indian retail in a manner that there is a lot of savings for the mass consumers. And due to those savings, the mass consumers' quality of life actually improves because of the deals that we give and the whole community building model that we are promoting. One, it onboards a lot of consumers together as groups or connected network of people, and then together they are able to buy at high quality products at low prices, which means that they are able to save a lot on their essential needs, and then through their savings also buy some aspirational products. For them it is aspirational, maybe not for SCCA, but which essentially adds up to their quality of living, and that is the whole mission here for each. Now there are a lot of things that we do behind that, but then essentially what we are trying to do is giving high quality products at low prices to a huge mass of customers. So our TAM is almost 50% of India's population, and we want to organize them and benefit from this model.
You have worked with Britannia, you have worked with Metro. Why has Britannia or the Metros of the world not tapped into this?
Every FMCG company definitely wants to get into the mass market product. Now, Parle-G is definitely a mass market product, and so is Maggie and a lot of other products. I'll first touch upon the FMCG space. The whole thesis about retail getting branded or organized is about premiumization of the customer. So customers moving from non-premium to premium brands, premium products, and all of that. Now that is a journey that naturally every country goes through. If you look at the Western countries, they would have taken 200 years to move from unorganized to organized and branded retail. Now there it seems very common. This journey actually is very much linked to the growth in per capita income of the country. You can essentially believe that the whole premiumization will follow the growth in income levels of the country. If we look at India, obviously the per capita income is very low and the growth is also not substantial, which means that the natural way of getting into branded products or organized retail, so both sides of the story, let's say FMCG world and the retail world, it will happen, but it will take its own time. I'm not saying that 100 years later, my organized retail share might move from 10% to 30%. And similarly, the top brand play might move from 15-20% to 40%. But given that the income levels are not increasing dramatically, this speed will be slow. It will take a lot of time, that natural movement. What we want is to get into a model which can organize them by replicating what they really value. Just as an example, that a mass India consumer would essentially value savings more than services. Now, the concept of premiumization is about paying for services. Eventually, if the model has to become profitable, somebody has to pay for services. And the concept of branding is about somebody has to pay for the endorsements. What we are doing is cutting all of that. So, cutting the whole endorsement side on one side, so that the unbranded or not or labeled product and not really branded products are high quality of products. Such products are given at low prices to them. And on the other side, we go for good to go services and not really the best of the best services. So we would not commit a 10-minute delivery. We would not commit something which would actually increase our operations cost. We work very efficiently on the fulfillment side, but we don't want to increase our operations cost. And there is no point burning a lot. Today we can burn but eventually we have to make profits. So we don't also create a high burn model. So that's essentially our thesis. I think we are working on a very different business thesis than the ecosystem which is working towards that natural path of premiumization or unbranded to branded store.
You talked about DealShare being a product for the masses. How do you build a customer centric business?
In fact, this is another a very important part of the whole story, and some of it we have learned through our own experiences by talking to thousands of customers. And I came from real top retailers and top brands. Similarly, my co-founders Vineet came from US. There was a different ecosystem altogether in terms of service and premiumization. And then the other founders also were working with branded or Western like retailers, so Western model like retailers. So all of us have actually learned through customer experiences. And the core to it is that what might be a good service, or let's put it differently, what might be a poor or bad service for an SECA customer can be good to go for somebody who doesn't have that much income. And at the same time, India is very socially different across localities, not just states or cities. So the whole culture is very different, and that is why we do the whole servicing or last mile through community leaders who belong to the locality. So what we don't run our own fleet, which operates with the same standards of services across all locations, all geographies, like other retailers or other e-commerce players do. We have community leaders who do servicing for their localities or their cities, small cities or whatever, small towns and so on, because they exactly know the social thread of the community or the locality, and they would fine tune the servicing basis what is good to go for that kind of locality, and which minimizes the actual cost of operations. Now, this kind of differentiated servicing model or a differentiated portfolio of services, or the way people behave with customers, is not seen anywhere else in any other organized retail format, because they all believe on standardization. Whereas you can think of us creating a cloud in the cloud of services in the retail ecosystem, where everybody is fine tuning it basis the locality or the community. And technology is at the center, where the ecosystem is managed through technology such that nothing goes wrong. We have a high NPS. We have 50% plus NPS, even at such low cost. So we do whole of fulfillment warehousing as well as last mile in just 6-7%, which is unheard of. If you look at other organized players, they would be running at 20%, barring DMart, which is sub 10%. So even at that low cost, we have 50% plus NPS. Our delivery ratings are 4.5 plus out of 5. That is the kind of cloud servicing that I was talking about.
The community leader, last mile business model or the structure layer is brilliant. How did you stumble upon it? Was it an idea that came from day one and you always thought that you are going to build community leaders who are going to do the last mile service? Or it came through experience?
This also came through a lot of experimentation, not that we started with that. All other retailers, obviously, we were very focused on efficient and frugal operations. We believe that the backbone of retail always is low fulfillment cost or low operations cost. The reason why a Walmart is successful in US or a DMart is successful in India or Costco elsewhere, all of these companies are better than or even Amazon in US, let's say, in the e-commerce space. So all these companies are doing much better than their peers because they first focused on creating an efficient and frugal operations model fine-tuned to their country. So that becomes the differentiator. So we were always focused on doing that. We said that from day one, the first thing to crack is frugal and efficient operations of fulfillment model, which suits the RTG, our target group. Now, we kept on experimenting. We also kept on talking to consumers. We were interacting with a lot of our fellow founders from other companies who had been in the ecosystem for quite some time. And through a lot of ideation, today we call this program DealShare Dost, but we started with Mohalla King. Mohalla is community in India. So the program started really as Mohalla King, and then we found immediate success. We saw that both the cost is coming down and the servicing is also going up, and more than that, the scalability was also very high, because you don't have to keep on bothering about recruitment of a lot of last mile players, because you are then creating micro entrepreneurs, and the micro entrepreneurs are in turn taking care of those last mile executives employment and all of that. Over time, Mohalla King became DealShare Dost, which is the community program that we have. So we started with Mohalla King, but we always wanted to be all our branding to be very Indian Bharat like, so Desi. And so King was obviously an English word, so we wanted something which is closer. And the other thing that we realized is that so King is like you are getting into somebody else's ego. So a Dost is more closer, you are servicing, and you cannot be the king of your community. You are actually somebody who is a friend to the community. So that is how we change the whole brand.
How do you choose the community leader? How do you know who's the right person? Because when you go to a small town or a city, your first tier city or second tier city, how do you do the selection?
We have again tried multiple models or multiple types of entrepreneurs to arrive at the sweet spot. So now we know exactly what kind of profile really does as a DealShare Dost. Initially, we tried with Kirana to become DealShare Dost, but very soon realized that they don't scale up. They don't have the logistics know-how, or they don't have the ability to manage large teams of 10 to 20 people. So generally, you would need 10 to 20 people management there for the community. And the last part is that it also needs a little bit of investment from the micro entrepreneur to start the business. So that kind of investments also are not readily available with small entrepreneurs. So over time, we realized that these are mid-tier entrepreneurs who can invest 50,000 to 1 lakh Indian rupees into to start the business, have some good hold in the community. So people know them. It is not that they are not known, or they have some kind of hold in the community, and that is why they are able to build the community faster, and also have the ability to manage at least 10 to 20 people team through some of their earlier businesses or earlier experiences. So typically people who have done some logistics business or distribution business or real estate business in the past and are not able to scale up and are not able to see future there, or have some other family member who wants to start a new stream of business, those are the ones who fit into a DealShare Dost program. Initially, we had to recruit, we had to do our own hard work, but now the community brings more community. So a DealShare Dost would bring another 5 DealShare Dosts because they are also doing well. Typically, these Dosts earn upwards of 50,000 per month net of their costs. So it is their primary income source or primary employment, or it's a primary business. And that is why the network of DealShare Dost is only increasing with time, because they are only bringing more Dosts.
The first product that you had was Raksha Bandhan packages. And we talk in the startup world a lot about MVP. You guys actually started with the Raksha Bandhan packages, landed up in Jaipur. You did a lot of customer service and became and are still probably our leaders on some of the WhatsApp groups.
All of the WhatsApp groups.
All of the
Yeah.
WhatsApp groups. That's amazing. Tell me, how do you plan an MVP?
So Raksha Bandhan was the first product. And just to take you through the history, first 2 months we were selling only on WhatsApp. We did not have an app, because what we wanted to test is were two things. One, whether a deal becomes viral, and WhatsApp was obviously the easiest mode to create virality. And we wanted to see whether if there is a substantial saving on a product, whether that saving would lead people to promote freely our deal, and hence bring more and more consumers. Now, that is where we tested a lot of products in the first 2 months and realized that only products which are highly relevant for the mass consumers. The frequency is not very important here, frequency of purchase. So it has to be highly relevant. Now, by relevance, we mean that the percentage of population that would buy that product sometime. So let's say an Indian apple is relevant, but not Apple Washington. Similarly, AAA or AA battery is relevant. Let's say a refrigerator is not that relevant, because not many people would buy. Over time, through a lot of experiments in those first 2 months, we tried to sell everything on WhatsApp, and came to this conclusion that we will be able to create virality through good deals only on products which are relevant to a high percentage of the population. As an example, a white plain low cost t-shirt with good quality is relevant, but the same price t-shirt, if it is a yellow polka dot, is not relevant, because not many people would want to buy that. Now the problem is that when I buy a white t-shirt, and I'm giving an extreme example because we deal with food and grocery and are known for that, but we also sell white t-shirts, sports shoes of 200 to 50 rupees. Now these become viral because a black sports shoes at 250 rupees is highly relevant for mass population. But a red tape leather shoes, or even costlier leather shoes, nobody would buy. Even if the cost is low, if there is a description of style, is not relevant. So that is how we choose.
You talked about that the initial sales was through WhatsApp. But when you actually were launching your Deal Shares app, your friends and family were not very convinced about it. But you still went ahead and launched it. What convinced you that was the app or the design that you should go forward with?
We would have continued with WhatsApp if the limitations of WhatsApp were not very high. Unfortunately, as we started scaling up, the whole effort of managing those orders on WhatsApp groups, and then collating them, and then tabulating them, and creating more and more WhatsApp groups, and then getting our SIMs blocked, and lots of problems happened when we tried to scale up. And we were scaling up really fast. Obviously, we thought of launching our app because that was the only natural progression. We were not very sure whether the app will also get adopted like our WhatsApp groups for order taking, because this was the first time somebody was going to the mass market with an app, go with content side apps, but not really with commerce apps into the mass market. And the consumers that we onboarded on our app first had only two other apps, WhatsApp and YouTube. And that was the kind of apps they were using. And before launching the app, we again, so every time when we have to do something new, we go back to consumers. We just immerse ourselves in consumers. And we created each and every feature, the whole look and feel of the app through consumer studies. So understanding our consumers, all our friends and family members said that this app nobody will use, this doesn't look like the app that we use, it is so stupid, it is so idiotic. Everybody commented negatively on the design, but we only listen to the consumers, and we created an app which looks very different from every other app that I or you would be using. The day we launched our app, we were doing around 200 to 300 orders on WhatsApp, and that was becoming very hard to manage. On the seventh day from the app launch, we were already doing upwards of 1,000, and then in 3 weeks we were doing 5,000 orders on the app. So it clearly said that the app was a hit in the mass market. While we might not have liked it, my own family members did not like the app, and none of my founders' family members like the app. Said it just doesn't look like an app, but that is what the mass consumer wanted. We actually focused on simplicity. So the big part of the research on the UX was that the consumer said that yes, I hear that other apps like Amazon, Flipkart, Big Basket, Grofers, at that time these were the four big e-commerce names. So they are giving a lot of discounts. But there were two problems that the mass consumer said. One, they don't understand how to use the app because it is very complex. They don't understand the language they are communicating in because it is not localized, or even if it is vernacular, it is still not localized. There is a lot of difference between vernacular and localization of language. And second, they said that the deals are mostly not relevant for me. Even if somebody is running a 50% off on a mobile phone or a laptop, how would I even afford it? So those were the two things that we said, that the app has to be extremely easy, fully localized. The tonality has to be local, not just vernacular. And then we said that the assortment has to be extremely localized. So those were the things that we focused on.
How, as a leader, you think, and how your personality and your thoughts have actually trickled down?
As a leader, and especially you are trying to create a massive startup, and the way we look at creation of this business, we would think of not just scalability but also profitability and huge capital efficiency. So we are known to drive all three together and not one against the other. So that is how we have driven the last 3.5 years, and the journey is only becoming better. When we start thinking from there, the first principle that we follow is that it has to have a mass appeal. So essentially, whatever we do, and it also has to do something with when we started up at 40 years of age, not at 25 years of age. And we actually left flourishing corporate careers to start this up. The agenda was not just to create a unicorn or a high valued startup, it was to give back to the country or serve a larger mission. And that is what we started with. And hence, the beginning always starts with whether we are solving a problem for a huge portion of the population where the masses benefit. So that is the kind of first thinking that I always trickle down to the team, that whenever you are thinking about a solution or a part of the business, you have to think whether it really touches the masses, whether it makes a difference in the country. Because if it makes a difference in the country, only then there is a mass business there is a large business. Otherwise it will be a very small business if the TAM itself is small. Second, now that you have hit upon a problem area, the solution has to be disruptive. Because if you are another me too and you are solving in a manner which somebody else has already solved some problem, then there is no value creation. You have identified a big problem, now you are thinking of a solution. So always go down to the path of thinking disruptive. What is the most disruptive way to solve that problem? So that's second. And then go behind it. So if you have chosen your path and you are very confident that this is the right problem to solve, and you have already decided that this is the most disruptive way, don't give up. You will have to try. And that is the third thing that I trickle down. Only through experimentation and repeated trials you will hit the jackpot. Don't give up by a failure on one experiment or two experiments. Believe in yourself that you have chosen the right path, and keep putting on efforts there. Only after a substantial amount of efforts, you will only come to know that this was not the right path. But You cannot leave it halfway there. That's the third. And then obviously core takeaways like integrity, honesty, hard work. These are built from the leadership side into the organization. Those are definitely key building blocks.
What is the power of communication?
Communication is extremely important in every part of your life, whether it is personal or professional. Communication plays a very important role. One very simple example that I always give to my friends is that however powerful the product might be, if it is not communicated or marketed, there will be no market for that product, even if it is the best product in the market. So communication is extremely important, but at the same time I believe that communication should be simple, clear, and to the point. So it has to be targeted, and it cannot be just that I did a lot of communication, I spent a lot of budget around it, and hence it is the right communication. The tenets of simplicity and targeting has to be succinct. So it has to be clean, clear communication, only then it works.
And as a founder, do you see capital as an asset?
Capital is definitely an asset, especially in a mass scale business like ours, where the TAM is huge, and whatever we do, like we are already at $1 billion revenue run rate, valued at close to $2 billion, but we believe that it is just 1% of what we can essentially do in our lifetime. So there is a huge amount of future potential. Now, however capital efficient we might be, there will still be capital required for creating the right infrastructure, the right technology, and growing fast. So to that extent, I think capital is extremely important as an asset. But we value that asset a lot, and we are really frugal on capital deployment as well.
Why do you think anybody has not replicated your model?
I think it is very hard to do all the groundwork that we as founders have done. Just to give you some background, like I said, all four of us were 40 years of age. 40, one was 42 and 3 or 40 years of age. All had families, kids, well settled in corporate careers. I was staying in Bombay, the other three were staying in Bangalore with their families. And the first thing we decided is that if we have to create this business, we have to go to the incubation location. And we did not start with a Bangalore or Bombay in our mind, because we said that we have to first prove this in a smaller city, because and that is where we chose a city which is at the cusp of a big city and a small city. Because if we were able to prove that in a city like Jaipur, which is at the cusp, we believe that it can be tiered down or tiered up. The model can be scaled both ways. Then we said that if we have to really create a differentiated business, there is nothing to copy, and hence we have to go and learn from the customers and the manufacturers and the suppliers there. So that is the first thing that we did. We spent 2 years away from our families. In those 2 years, I would have met my family, my daughters, for only 30 days in total. And just to let you know, when I decided to start up, my younger daughter was just 8 months old. So it was a very tough decision on the personal front. Obviously, family supported all four of us a lot. All our families were very supportive, and that helped us. Starting from there, every path that we have chosen, while we believe that it was the right path for the business, naturally it is a hard path, because when you are taking a right path for creating a disruptive business and there is nothing to copy and you are creating through grounds up a first principles basis, it becomes hard to copy for others. And those are the modes that we are creating over time. Even today, whenever we are looking at creating more solutions, we don't get carried away by some company for creating, a disruption in the market for a short period of time by deploying a lot of capital. So there are numerous such examples that have come on our way, like video commerce, now quick commerce, and all of that. I'm not saying that those models might not be disruptive, but we have chosen a path which we believe is highly disruptive and engulfs a huge market. So we stay course there, and I think that is the reason why, especially people have not tried to copy the model much. I think they have tried. So I have heard of a couple of companies who tried but could not scale up, because the sacrifices that one has to make in the scaling of this model is much higher than what we generally see in the startup formula that, or the startup ecosystem formula that we see, where some people are generally trying to copy some Western model or Chinese model. So those are easier to do because they have been proven elsewhere. And then there is a lot of support that you get from the investing community or even other parts of the ecosystem, that yes, this model has worked somewhere in US or somewhere in China, and hence it will work in India through evolution of the ecosystem. But when you are trying to create something which is very different, then the belief also is really low apart from your own belief. And then you have to prove every time that yes, it is working much better than others. And that is when you get more and more believers into the path.
Now you have a huge team. You have now 1,500 people.
1900 now.
1900 now. How do you think about building a team?
There are some core principles by which obviously I'm not able to now take interviews for all 1900, but the senior leadership I'm still interviewing to the extent that I can. And this DNA I have been passing on to each layer in the team so that they also follow the core principles. It goes back to the principles of the business building that I spoke about in an earlier question. So people who are ambitious, ready to work hard, can think big, can think mass and not just premium. So people who are connected through some means to the mass market and mass population of India and are really kicked about creating a solution which touches a lot of lives and not really just getting into a startup which is doing well or a company which is doing well. Those are the people we would be more inclined to recruit. Those who really want to make a difference to the community and also on the way when you are making a difference to the community and really solving the right problems, then your career is anyways bound to be better than others. But those people who have that thinking are the ones who do well, and that is the kind of people we would also want to.
That's a great place to close this conversation. Thanks for being on the show.
Thanks a lot, and look forward to meeting you again.